100 days into the Iran war, President Trump says he's looking for a deal to end the fighting.
Iran is very much intent. They want very much to make a deal. So far, they haven't gotten there. We're not satisfied with it, but that we will be.
President Trump has been laser focused on making sure that his deal is better than what his predecessor could achieve. In late May, he posted on Truth Social that if he makes a deal with Iran, it will be a good and proper one, not like the one made by Obama, which gave Iran massive amounts of cash and a clear and open path to a nuclear weapon. The president said his deal will be the exact opposite, even though he says it isn't even fully negotiated yet. Now, that thinking that he has to secure something better than Obama's deal, that's leaving the president somewhat stuck. And it's part of why his administration's negotiations are dragging on.
The question then is not whether to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, but how.
Since the late 1970s, the U.S. has used economic penalties or sanctions against Iran to punish it for a variety of adversarial behaviors, things like state-sponsored terrorism, most notably, as well as human rights abuses.
Since the 1979 revolution in Iran, all the U.S. administrations settled on sanctions as a very effective way, short of war, to try to compel Iran to do that which we wanted them to do.
And the sanctions severely weakened Iran's economy. They were broad. They limited Iran's central bank activity, its oil exports, petrochemicals, shipping and port operations, insurance, and the trade of commodities like metals. Now, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the JCPOA, had a simple premise. The U.S. and other countries would lift some of those sanctions, in effect boosting Iran's economy, if Iran agreed to limit its ability to develop a nuclear weapon. The deal was between Iran, the U.S., and a broader consortium. It included China, Russia, the U.K., as well as members of the European Union. And it had two major effects. First, it reduced or eliminated trade sanctions imposed by various countries on the Iranian government. And second, it forced Iran to abandon a program intended to develop nuclear weapons. CNBC spoke with representatives of the Obama administration who negotiated the JCPOA back in 2015.
What he did with a roughly 160-page agreement, it took in total more than 5 years to negotiate, was to put serious constraints on the Iranian nuclear program, while also, and this was the most important part, massively increasing our ability to verify what Iran was doing with its nuclear program.
Iran agreed to slash its ability to enrich uranium and plutonium. It would abandon thousands of centrifuges used to develop nuclear bombs, and it would shrink its stockpiles of the raw inputs for these weapons. Each of these provisions came with sunsets of up to 15 years. That, though, did prove to be controversial. And Iran also agreed to allow a third party, the International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA. They were allowed to conduct 24/7 inspections of nuclear sites to verify Iran's compliance with the agreement.
If Iran violates the agreement over the next decade, all of the sanctions can snap back into place.
Now, critics of the deal said that it didn't enforce Iran's compliance and it didn't limit Iran's ability to research and develop nuclear weapons systems.
Iran will immediately use the money that it's receiving in sanctions relief to begin to build up its conventional capabilities. It will establish the most dominant military power in the region outside of the United States, and it will raise the price of us operating in the region.
President Trump then pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal during his first term in the White House.
In a few moments, I will sign a presidential memorandum to begin reinstating U.S. nuclear sanctions on the Iranian regime. The fact is, this was a horrible one-sided deal that should have never, ever been made.
The 2015 Iran deal took more than a year and a half of intensive talks. It required cooperation from Russia, China, and the United Nations. It's still considered among many in the international community to be among the most rigorous attempts to rein in Iran's nuclear program. And it's not clear whether or why Iran would agree now to much more than what they did before.
The negotiation isn't over. Maybe there'll be a rabbit pulled out of the hat. We all hope so. But right now, the conditions would certainly appear to be far less favorable than they were a decade ago.
One of the biggest differences between the Iran negotiations the U.S. is leading now and what it was doing a decade ago under President Obama is that the U.S. is pretty much going at this alone. It's not working with European allies. China, we know, is talking with the Iranians. So now this is, in effect, weakening the U.S.'s standing a little bit because they're going at this somewhat alone rather than as a unified global effort.
All of it could have been stronger. President Obama himself said, ideally he didn't want one spinning centrifuge. but the perfect is the enemy of the good.
And ongoing fighting across the Middle East is making negotiations that much more difficult. Israel is not agreeing to stop fighting Hezbollah in Lebanon, which Iran insists must be part of any deal. And Iran's successful choking off of traffic through the Strait of Hormuz over the past few months, that's given them more leverage on the global stage.
I think the president believes that he can get this through diplomatic pressure and tough negotiations, and I think he should be given a chance.